Hello, it's Sarah Maxwell with Designs by Sarah J. Welcome back to Swivel, the 2020 Quiltmania Mystery Project. I'm so excited that we've made it to installment 5 because that means finishing the quilt is just around the corner. But before we can start on that step, we have to do a few more things to get ready. Now, if you purchased yardage from a participating shop, then you will be receiving this print in your kits for this installment. This is another great shirting print from the Full Circle fabric line. I love how it has these little floral medallions surrounded by a viney leaf. You'll have received a yardage cut of this, and you'll only use part of that with this installment because you're going to need it extensively next installment to start setting the whole quilt together. Now, I mentioned that we're making block components again this month, and that's because next month, or next installment, you're going to receive the mystery fabric, and that's when you can really start finishing all the block units that we have made to date that we're waiting on that key piece. If you purchase the acrylic templates from me, I wanted to review one thing that's important when using the acrylics. Make sure that when you lay this on your fabric to cut it out, your fabric is right side up and you can read the words. That's the way you can always make sure that your pieces will be oriented the right direction and the shapes fit together when you have directional templates. So let me show you how you're going to use F3. For this installment, you'll be cutting the blues, greens, and grays from F3. And as I mentioned, it will lay on top of the fabric right side up so that you can read the words. We're actually making 4 sets of the block components for this installment, so be sure to read the directions and cut out enough shapes to make the components. Here's that shirting fabric, and it's cut from shape F2, and then you'll see some additional cutting as we move on through the video and into the next segments of the pattern. So make sure your pieces are oriented correctly, start cutting, and then we'll move on to talk about block assembly. We'll also be using this F4 shape, and as you can see, it's going to be with the reds and the pinks and a purple. And then we're using F6, that's this shape here, and then finally F5 is picking up that shirting print. So cut out all of these shapes and then we'll start piecing one of the block units, and I'll show you how to move forward from here. Before we started stitching, I wanted to point out one thing. So you might have wondered, why in the world did I have you cut apart this piece when obviously you could have started with a piece like this and had one less seam? Well, hopefully that becomes clear over here. You know, we've been trying to construct as much of this block as possible in triangular wedges, which means you have fewer Y seams to deal with if you are machine piecing this. So hopefully now you can see that by dividing that piece, we now are going to be able to go back to that old familiar triangular wedge construction that we've done for quite a few of the other blocks, meaning this block can be very easily machine pieced. So I'm going to go ahead and start building out the entire layout of all the colors. I'll show you that next, and then this block will be a snap to make. If you want to press directionally, then press the 3 component wedges up and press the seams on the 4 component wedges down, and that will help anytime that we have a seam coming together. Things will nest a little bit better. Again, you can always try to press the seams open because sometimes that really does help as well when you've got so many seams. So I'm going to go ahead and start piecing the wedges, and then we'll be ready to talk about block construction. So here's the layout with one of each of the wedges pieced. I wanted to just kind of show you how this is now coming together. Hopefully you can see a little bit about how the colors are all going to intersect, and maybe you're starting to have a little insight into where this overall quilt design is headed with the mystery. I did want to point out too, as I had mentioned, we have this unit that will come together here to form a parallelogram, and you might have wondered, well, why wasn't that just one template with a Y seam? Well, now if you decide to reuse these templates, you can play a little bit with the block, and you could make this piece or this piece a different color, and so that's going to give you another kind of shattered star effect in that center. So I wanted this to be versatile, and also we're avoiding that Y seam there. I mentioned that with any unit with 3 pieces, press the seams one direction, and then a unit with 4 pieces, press it the opposite direction. And that's going to help this seam right here nest together really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the next step of where we're headed, and then we'll be ready to wrap up this installment.